We are acting based on science.
I think it's important to follow the science. Listen to the experts. Do what they tell you.
If we don't follow the science, that the economic woes will be worse, they will be more in-depth.
We follow the science, we follow the facts, we follow the data.
Have you ever noticed that these experts never tell us to follow the science if it means advocating for anything less than really restrictive shutdowns? Now, I want to walk you through 4 examples of what I'm getting at tonight. Number 1, the idea that the second wave is inevitable.
We will have coronavirus in the fall. I am convinced of that because of the degree of transmissibility that it has. We often talk about the possibility of a second wave or of an outbreak when you're reopening. We don't have to accept that as an inevitability.
Well, did the science really change? Of course not. The second wave scenario was never settled science. You only need to look at SARS. That burned out in the United States, around the world, frankly, for 6 months. It was gone. Number 2, social distancing.
Every day that we follow social distancing protocols, we save lives. Do the right thing for your community, for your friends, and for your family.
Beaches will open up this week for exercise and active recreation only in the wet sand, I guess is a good way of thinking about it, not hanging out and tanning in the dry sand.
Here's the truth. Social distancing as a governmental response plan was adopted under Bush in the early 2000s to combat influenza, not coronaviruses. Also, those planners never imagined it would be practical on a national scale, certainly among children. And based on the results so far, they're probably right.
I think it's fair to say that it didn't work as well as we expected. We expected that we would start seeing more significant declines in new cases and deaths around the nation at this point, and we're just not seeing that.
And now they're telling us that standing, get this one, 6 feet apart isn't enough. Could be as much as 18 apart. Then you're going to have to be in another zip code to really be safe. Number 3, keep people indoors.
We're going to do a hard close in that part of the state, just in the Orange County area. Specific issues on some of those beaches have raised alarm bells. We're going to have a temporary pause on the beaches down there.
But of course, the science also tells us fresh air and sunshine keep the virus at bay. In fact, a recent study on viral outbreaks in 320 Chinese cities found only 1 occurred outdoors, and it only involved 2 people. And finally, number 4, mask shaming.
I think it's disrespectful of people not to wear masks. You could literally kill someone because you didn't want to wear a mask.
I don't walk out in my yard to talk to the Secret Service without the mask on. It's critical. We have an obligation to be responsible.
Even the WHO guidance just released says, quote, currently, there is not enough evidence for or against the use of masks, and little evidence that non-sick people gain any benefit. My next guest says science is being hollowed out and used as a smokescreen to push political agendas. Joining me now is Todd Myers, director of the Center for the Environment at the Washington Policy Center. Todd, first tell us what we're seeing within the COVID debate, and then explain how the co-opting of science has now even moved beyond COVID.
Well, it's very clear that we don't fully understand the science, which is understandable because it's very new. But what you hear, though, is politicians claiming that they know very clearly what the science is, and yet state to state, you see states doing very different things. In Washington state, we didn't allow fishing. We were the only state in the nation not to allow recreational fishing, while everybody else did, and yet that was done in the name of science. And the problem with using science in that way, when people clearly recognize that it's not the science that you're following, is that they become cynical. It's like crying wolf too many times, and they stop trusting science when we really need good science.
Well, and you get the sense that the science, as a very famous scientist wrote recently, there's rarely scientific consensus. Sometimes it takes centuries for there to be a scientific consensus on fundamental concepts. And sometimes the evidence is right underneath our own noses, really obvious answers to difficult problems, but the science isn't settled, right? I mean, we've seen that time and again.
And it evolves over time. So this is why it is important for science to be located closest to the people who it impacts. So in my area, the environment, the science is most important for farmers, for hunters, for others who care about wildlife, who care about taking care of the planet, because if they don't on their farm, they pay the price. Politicians, on the other hand, can use the word science to attack a political opponent, but if they get it wrong, they don't pay the price. It's very important that when we use science, we locate it based on the people who are going to use it, who it impacts. They can see it for their own eyes, and they're going to make sure to get it right and make sure not to just use it as a weapon against people they don't like.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. Letting people make decisions that they're ultimately going to be accountable for. A restaurant, you don't have good sanitary conditions, people get sick there, you're going to get sued or go out of business. I mean, let people determine it for themselves without saying, well, the science demands. Montgomery County, Maryland, they were doing this today. This Ulrich character, who's a commissioner there, he's saying, well, the science says. Like, you wouldn't know the science if it bit you and the you-know-what. Todd, we got to go. But let's have you back because it was a fantastic report tonight. Thanks so much. And speaking of twisting science, there's new reviews of studies that vindicate the use of hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin as a treatment, an early treatment, especially outpatient treatment, for COVID-19. Now, this paper comes out from one of the most renowned epidemiologists in the world, Dr. Harvey Risch at Yale School of Medicine. Now, in the review, he concludes, quote, 5 studies, including 2 controlled clinical trials, that's what Fauci always says we need, have demonstrated significant major outpatient treatment efficacy. These medications need to be widely available and promoted immediately for physicians to prescribe. Here to respond, Dr. William Grace, oncologist and hematologist. Dr. Grace, you've been with us from the original medicine cabinet on the Ingram angle from the very beginning. What do you make of this obsession with trying to malign the use of an age-old anti-malarial that has had clear antiviral properties? What's going on?
Well, I think what's going on is people are playing politics, and that's been aided by the mainstream media and many academics. And that's wrong. You got to keep the politics out of this and keep the scientists working hard. So basically, the article says we have to fight this war because to date we have fought the war in the hospitals, which is both expensive, morbid, and mortal. And so we have remdesivir, one drug which can reduce the death rate from 11 to maybe 8%. But where we should be fighting this war is in the outpatient. And the outpatient clinics were all closed in the initial fighting of this war. We have to get it out into the clinics. So when people out in the country, out in many areas of the United States, develop symptoms, we know that these agents, hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, with or without zinc, that these agents massively reduce the risk of hospitalization and death, perhaps by orders of magnitude, maybe by as much as 50-fold.
Oh, Dr. Grace, you had Dr. Fauci on CNN, I believe it was yesterday morning or the morning before, saying, oh, the data's coming in. It's basically pretty evident that these have no effects. These medications have and can be dangerous. That's what he said on national TV.
Yeah, Laura, he's waiting till September when we may have lost 180,000 people by then. And I don't think we can wait till then. We can use these drugs and substantially reduce that 180,000. We're losing 10,000 people per week right now. And if we wait 18 weeks, that'll be 180,000. So that is not acceptable to me and to many physicians.
Dr. Grace, I wanted to ask you about masks, but we'll have to wait for another night. Thanks so much. Great to see you.
Good to see you, Laura. Thank you for having me.